Okay, so well, this time we have here with us Katy Sullivan, inspiring actress, amputee, and a Paralympian from America all the way. And we are going to talk a little bit about your journey, Katy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you. And why don't you start by telling us a little bit about where you're from, and I believe you grew up in Alabama.
I did. I was actually born in Texas, and my dad was a military doctor, so I was born on a military base in Texas, and my parents didn't know. My amputations are congenital, and neither of them knew. I think it kind of was around the time, sort of before everybody got an ultrasound. So before the time that if they felt like something was concerning or wrong, they might say, oh, let's check out what's going on. But I seemed to be doing fine. And then it was actually when my mom was in labor that one of the nurses gasped in the operating room, in the delivery room. And they were like, here, have some oxygen. It was not oxygen. They knocked her out and got me out. So I from day one, I was missing both of my limbs from right above the knee. So I have full femur bones, and never really had any operations or true amputations. I had one minor operation when I was 6 to help me accommodate sockets. But other than that, it's just sort of don't mess with it. Like, it works. Don't mess with it. Yeah.
And you had prosthetics since when?
I got my first pair of we called them rocker bottoms. They call them stubbies now. At least they do in America. I'm not sure what they're called around the world. But when I was 1, I started trying to stand up like babies try to stand up. And my parents were like, we got to get something underneath her. So yeah, I've been wearing prosthetics since the time I learned how to ambulate on my own.
So you obviously learned very fast to balance and even run.
For sure. I mean, it is something that is just sort of, I'm sure my core muscles are stronger than the average person's just to get up and walk around. I mean, it's a full body experience and commitment to walk on prosthetic legs every day. Some days are better than others, even this far down the road. But it's all I've ever known. So
it felt kind of natural for you just to take on the Paralympics.
I mean, I have to say that for me, growing up, I didn't participate a lot in sports. I was on a swim team as a kid, and I participated in some individual things, but it was not something that calling myself an athlete was a really hard thing for me early on, because I just was like, I don't feel like I'm an athlete. Like, I don't know what that is. And because I got my first pair of running feet when I was 25. So I had never run before in my life before giving me, getting a chance to try the running blades, the feet. And it's something that none of us realized. I happened to be quick. So, but I grew up acting, and I grew up auditioning for things, and I kind of approached being an athlete, and I kind of approached, track as an actor. I sort of would ask the questions of like, okay, how would an athlete act? I think an athlete would wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym before work. And I think an athlete would eat this avocado instead of those potato chips, or, I mean, it was sort of, it was kind of fake it till you make it. And eventually, when you're traveling internationally to compete in track meets, you start to go, okay, maybe I am an athlete. Like I can start calling.
How fast did it go from the time you started running, 25 years old, on a running legs, until you were actually competing?
That's a great question. I had never run before in my life. And I went to a running clinic because I had no muscle memory of running. Mm-hmm. So I would kind of hop on each foot twice because my brain knew what running was, but my muscles didn't. They didn't understand. Mm-hmm. And so once I finally did sort of that kind of clicked, it was at a running clinic for amputees specifically. It was within 2 months of that I was at a national competition. I was way in over my head. I was terrified. So early on, just feeling like I was like, can I just sing the national anthem? Like I would just rather do that than run this race. I was so scared. And I didn't have this is a great example of, if you decide to do something, you have to really give it the dedication and the time, because at that first track meet, I took 3 steps after the gun went off and I fell. I tripped and I fell. Mm-hmm. Because I think it was nerves and just feeling overwhelmed and not knowing how to quiet your mind enough to do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. So my first big track meet, I fell on my face. And I had to get up, and I was crying when I got to the finish line. And it was that moment that I realized, if this is something I actually want to do, I have to respect it and give it the time and the commitment that it deserved.
Yeah. But then you started to get really serious about it. There was a big competition in Brazil.
Yes.
That was kind of the beginning of your kind of bigger events.
Bigger events. Yeah. I competed. That was maybe a year and a half in. Mm-hmm. So not even, probably about a year and a half after I first ran for the first time. Mm-hmm. And the thing about Paralympics is that you're broken down into categories. So and that kind of everybody is kind of across all disabilities. But it'll be like, I was technically a T stands for track, 42, and a number 42 is I am technically a T41, and a 41 is a bilateral above the knee amputee. Okay. But I was the first woman competing in the world internationally, bilateral on my feet, so not in a wheelchair.
Amazing.
And I had to run against T42 women, which were unilateral amputees above the knee. So, so out of the blocks, I was always playing catch up. Like, there's no prosthetic foot that's going to give you the power of a sound side. So I was always chasing people, but I was pretty good at chasing people. Once you get going, after like 20 meters, it's pretty amazing what you can, the ground you can make up.
Excellent. And then you went for your first so then you started your Paralympic quest, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So after Brazil, it just it gave me the opportunity to sort of say, this is possible. Like, this is, I can do this. And I I ended up training for the Beijing Games, which were in 2008.
Yeah.
And because that Brazil was in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And really just kind of focusing and trying to, train and dedicate all my time and effort into doing that. And it was about a month before nationals, and you had to compete at nationals to compete in the games. And it was about a month before nationals, and I got sick. I got mono. And I not sure how, where I got it or how I got it, but it depresses your immune system so much, and you're very weak and very tired. And so I was going to a track meet about a week before nationals to just kind of like shake the nerves off and get into, take an opportunity to run. And all I'm talking about is falling, but I had a big fall that day. And I ended up I had to get stitches in my face, and I just big bad track fall. And I ended up hurting my back. And I always like to say, actually, this is a very good backtrack. I do like to say, be careful what you wish for, because, early on, all I wanted to do was sing the national anthem at that event at the nationals. And that year they had asked me to sing the national anthem.
Okay.
So I showed up with all of these. I put giant sunglasses on because I had a black eye, and I had this back pain, so I was on some pain medication. And I was saying to somebody that it could have been the slowest national anthem that has ever been sung. I have no idea how well it went. But then I sat in the stands and I watched my 100 meters run by, and was pretty devastated. I think for anybody who sets their goals for something extraordinary or something larger than life, there's no hiding when you either have a failure or you have or you succeed. So, but it was one of these moments that made me really have to kind of take stock and see what do I ultimately want to do. And I was injured for a while, and it wasn't until I was doing a play in Chicago about a year and a half later, and I was swimming every day. We had a pool where I was living, and I just started feeling stronger. And I just was like, what if I went back to a track meet? Like, what if I, and so kind of dipping my toes back into the water of competing again. Yeah.
And that is where you set your eyes on London.
It felt like Beijing was far enough in the rear view mirror that it wasn't painful emotionally and also physically. And it just was kind of like, listen, if the worst thing that can happen is that I try and I, get into fantastic shape, and my back is no longer painful because I'm doing so much activity, and the worst case scenario is that I don't make the US team. And to me, that was a good enough reason to try. Like, that was like, okay, I could fail, but it felt worth it. So, so I started competing again, and I started training again, and
excellent.
And it eventually, it did lead to that year, 2012. I set and reset the US record in the 100 meters 4 times. Like, I was just like accelerating my own, like, and at the end of the day, that to me was the biggest aspect of all of it is like the only person I cared about beating on the track was myself. Like I was still having to compete with women who have,
to finish. Just be there.
So it ends up being like, who, you know, at the end of the day, you just want to strive to be your best.
Yeah.
And it truly was. And honestly, in London, going into that competition, I knew on paper, I was like, unless 3 people fell down
Oh, really?
at the beginning of that race,
Okay.
I was like, it's not going to happen. And I only had one race I could run. It was just the 100 meters. I couldn't, we didn't,
no other option. Yeah.
We had no 200. And actually the 200 meter was my better race because like I said, about getting up to speed. And so I trained, I mean, if you want to get technical, I trained for 4 years for a race that was going to last less than 18 seconds.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So at that point, you really just have to soak up the experience. And, you know, whatever happens, you just kind of have to, I mean, but I had so many other things that I was focused on. Like I said, like we've said, I'm an actress. That's what I got my
you
degree.
picked fantastic games, at least. I mean, these were the first Olympic games that were sold out in history. I mean, it was such amazing games. I was there myself. It was incredible to be part of, and so. It might have taken you a while to get there, but at least you got the best one so far, I think.
It was unbelievable to be there doing that. And London, I mean, the UK did such a great job. They really it was incredible. It was really incredible. And the energy of like, I mean, I ran that 100 meters in front of 80,000 people.
Yeah.
Like the stadium was packed every single day. And apparently there were people who were trying to get tickets to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And then when they couldn't, they were sold out, you know, they couldn't get tickets. Everybody just started buying tickets to Paralympics. And it was like, you know, it was just really cool. And the feeling in London at the time, they were so proud and so excited to have people there. If you were anywhere out in the city and you looked even slightly confused, someone would be like, do you need help? You know, like it was just like they
so how were these games in terms of you personally? Just how transformative were they for you, just personally?
I think the transformation ultimately kind of comes with, I mean, I think with any athlete, you sort of realize those moments are few and far between, and it's the commitment to yourself. And it's all of those days that you are on the track by yourself and no one is cheering and no one is, I think that was sort of the biggest shift in at least thought. And the biggest impact on me was sort of realizing that if you show up for yourself and you work hard and put one foot in front of the other every day, you can achieve amazing things. I mean, crazy things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had told me as a teenager that you could just list off all these, she's an actress, she's the Paralympic, you know, like you say all these things, and it can be overwhelming, and it can also feel like, a big responsibility to be a role model and to be all of these things, but to be a person who grew up in a world where no one looked like me, and I couldn't turn on the television and see somebody that was a double amputee. I never saw a double amputee on television until I was on television. in the United States. So like, that to me is the biggest transformation for me in my life, is knowing that little girls that are like me can point to someone now and say, well, she did that. She did that. So why can't I? Why shouldn't I? And I think that's the biggest impact that it's had.
And I think that was also very much the impact of those games, how I felt being part of it there in London, more than any times before, because I've been part of these Paralympic Games several times, that it just somehow elevated the image of people living with disabilities.
Right.
Don't you think?
I agree completely. I think there's a fine balance between, there is a bit of a tendency to elevate people living with disabilities to sort of superhero. Oh, they're superheroes. They're, and there is an aspect of like, no, I'm just going to the grocery store. Like I'm not a superhero. I just ran out of milk, So like, there is this balance, but I think what those games specifically, and I feel like there was a shift globally of realizing what more people living with disabilities can accomplish and bring to the table. I think in any way more bigger than a way that I've ever seen a big shift happen. Yeah.
Oh, it was a great milestone. But let's talk a little bit about Katy, the actress. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said earlier that you basically have always been acting. So that's very started.
I went. I saw a production of. There were a couple of times in my early childhood where I saw, it was primarily kids, when kids were acting either in a play that I saw or in a movie. Like I saw the movie Annie, and it was all these kids, and I was just like, how are these kids doing this? Like, I don't think any of those kids lived in Alabama. And they also probably all had agents. So like there was a confusion of young Katy of like, how do you sign up to do this? But I went to my first audition when I was 12. I begged my parents to take me to go for a play, for a children's theater. It was Sleeping Beauty. It was just this tiny little thing. And I played a townsperson. And I just was like, this is it. Like, this is all I want to do. And oddly enough, I don't know how oddly, but like in 1996, I was like, what year was that? I actually performed at the opening ceremonies. The Olympics were in Atlanta. And I was a singer. I was one of the kids picked. I think I was 16 years old.
We were in Atlanta too.
Yeah, but
well.
Oh wow. we keep missing each other.
Yeah, wonder why we never met.
Yeah. But I was standing on a field, a big soccer stadium singing, and I was just like, that is what made sense to me, to be a part of any sort of Olympic anything. Was like, oh, clearly I'm a singer, I'm a performer, I get to, that makes sense. So if you had told that kid that she would then, be competing in an Olympic and Paralympic event, I think she would have laughed at you. But I ended up, I wanted to study. I wanted to learn how to be an actor. I wanted to learn method and theory, and I really wanted to get my hands dirty. So I went to a conservatory audition for university, and I studied acting. And when I got out of college, I moved to Chicago for a while and did theater, and spent most of my time early on in LA. And I'm now in New York, in the New York area, because I've done some stuff off Broadway, and this most recent, this last year, I was on the new season of the show Dexter on Showtime. So back and forth to Boston, and yeah. So the acting has evolved over time. I spent a lot of my early career showing up to auditions in jeans and cosmetic, not even like cool, like just sort of, we're blending in here. We're trying to sort of blend in with the able-bodied crowd. And there were a lot of times that I had a lot of anxiety about going into auditions and into rooms when I was younger, because I wasn't sure. It almost felt like having a disability was this big liability. And I feel like we have had, in the same way that the London Olympics opened people's eyes to athletes with disabilities and people who live their lives that way, I think it started to, it's becoming so much more a movement in Hollywood as well, of inclusion. And don't take an able-bodied person and sit them in a wheelchair. Let someone who lives their life that way and from that perspective play that character, because they're going to bring something to that perspective of that character that an able-bodied person never would. A subtlety. Yeah.
And you feel like that is changing since you've been at it for a while now, and you've seen a development for a certain time.
I do feel like, I think we still have a long way to go. Individuals with disabilities are the largest minority in the world, and we are still the least represented in our entertainment and our media. Things slowly are, it takes a long time to turn the ship, but I'm so much more busy than I was when I was younger. There would be years that I would have one audition in an entire year, because people were either not willing to pitch me for things or not willing to see me. Who knows? But I do feel like there has been a shift, a consciousness shift of people wanting this to be part of inclusion. But it's slow. Progress is slow.
It's slow, but it's great that shows like Dexter, which are obviously, it's a big show, is doing that. And you can see it really when you watch it with you in it. It's it adds another kind of sizzle to it, that you are who you are, and like no other.
One of the things, I actually talked to one of the writers of Dexter, and I was like, why did you write her this way? Because they wrote they wrote Esther the way that they did, and they just said they wanted it to reflect the real world. They wanted this town to have people who were every shade of color and every sexual orientation, and the people that. And so what drew me to the role was the fact that the plot had nothing to do with her disability. There was no big like reveal or big, she wasn't in some huge accident. I know her backstory, but like that wasn't made, a big part of the show. She was just a woman who had a job. And she showed up and she was good at her job. And she, she happened to live her life from that perspective, but it wasn't about that. And I think that, to me, that's the most exciting shift that I have seen, because usually in past shows that I've been on, nothing against any of them, but it's always been, you know, oh, at the end of the scene, stand up, and we'll be like, oh my God, you know, like, or, you know, there's always sort of this reveal of the prosthesis. And instead, and it also often is a plot point, or you know, I did a TV show right before the pandemic kind of shut everything down in the United States, where I played a doctor who uses a wheelchair. But then there's this huge explosion and all this stuff happens and like falls on me and all that stuff. And it's just, it was refreshing to work with the people on Dexter, because they specifically came at it from a place of yeah, this is just who she is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. But so Dexter is definitely a big milestone for you, and but also obviously before that, it's worth really definitely mentioning is the cost of living show that you were on. And
yeah, so I was it was funny, I was just with the writer of that play this last week in New York, and it's been about 6 years since the first time I was sent that script. And it is a beautiful play about, again, it's people who live their lives from this very specific place of like, disability is my reality. But they never, it's not an educational, like, it's not an opportunity to say, this is what a spinal cord, you know, this is what CP means. Like, it's all just people and relationships and people trying to figure out how to help each other without kind of steamrolling the relationships. And it ended up off Broadway in 2017. And in 2018, it won the Pulitzer Prize for drama. And it's a beautiful story. I've been able to do the play, and I did the show in London. It was actually one of these moments in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, such big things have happened for me in this city in London. Yeah, we're
so, I mean, that's amazing. So London, and then the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, that's quite accomplishments in a short time. Obviously now Dexter, and what's next?
What's next? Well, I can't speak too much specifically about what's next. So there's good stuff. I'm going to be there's an opportunity, if people are in the New York area, to see me sometime later this year in a project. So there is stuff, but it's you know, you can't talk about it. I've actually also been doing a bunch of voiceover work. So I've just recently had the opportunity to voice an animated character, which is really exciting and fun. And I'm really excited for kids to see her, because my character actually uses a prosthetic leg, but it's never talked about. It's just who she is, and she shows up, and it's going to be a really sweet show, and I can't wait. But none of it, I can't tell you anything.
No. Okay, have to wait. You will keep us posted.
Yeah,
please do. So obviously, as someone who has been using prosthetics for so long, I'm curious really to hear your thoughts. you are an expert,
right?
So how do you feel about prosthetics as they are today? And you have any? I'm sure you have some opinion on that.
I sort of feel like I have a, I think amputees sort of have a love-hate relationship with their prosthesis. I think there are certain days where it's hard. You're basically asking your body to, and your skin and your muscles to put up with something that is not a natural thing to attach to your body, but the freedom and the independence that it can offer people, and the fact that you don't, you can have that sort of amount of independence that you wouldn't normally have or couldn't in the past. I definitely have grown way more accepting of my body and what it looks like, and the prosthesis and how that looks. But I love the fact that we're starting to evolve into a place where using things like the covers, UNYQ and other, there's having the opportunity to show a bit of your own personal style and your own personality through something that normally would just be a metal pole. And you just sort of are having an opportunity to elevate something into, I'm really big into fashion, and I love doing red carpet events and getting really dressed up, and I love all of that stuff. And I think that there is a hardness to a prosthesis that can be really cool, but in certain circumstances that's not really the look you're going for. You want an opportunity to sort of evolve in the same way that you would put on a different pair of shoes for an outfit. Having the opportunity to change the appearance of your prosthesis in a way that reflects the rest of your, the look you're going for, or, making it, show, like I said, show your personality in some way.
Yeah. No, I mean, we are very guilty of the fact that prosthetics looks like engineers made it, because it's made by engineers. And
functionality is amazing. Like the microprocessor knee, I wear microprocessor knees every day. They help me not have to look at the ground and worry about what I'm stepping on, and I don't have to think so much about them all the time. Engineering is a beautiful thing, but cosmesis, having a cosmetic, it helps you. I think it also will help people embrace them a little bit more. There's something that's not so cold, and like you don't necessarily want someone to like notice or look at it. And I get that everybody's sort of on their own timeline of that. But if you could feel like you like how they look, could change your whole attitude and can, help you move along in your life, or go get a job, or feel confident meeting new people, or, instead of feeling like it's something that you have to hide.
Yeah. No, and is that something you feel like you have been doing in the past, that you have been hiding?
I did not start. I was really running when I started running, that I had never worn. There's a photo of me in my running blades for the first time ever. And if you look at that photo, I'm wearing a pair of like sweatpants, but they're rolled up, because I literally didn't own a pair of shorts, because I called it the art of blending in. I just wanted people to notice me because I'm funny or smart or beautiful or any of those things, and not because I walked around on, metal sticks for legs. And it was a transition for me to be able to like go out in the world and go for a run and know that people are going to sort of glance at you and be able to fill in the blanks of all of these things that they assume your life is.
Yeah.
And it's vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable place. It's like, going somewhere without your pants on. Like it's exposing. And it was through the process of running that I just was like, gosh, why am I wasting all of this time worrying about what other people think about me? It was also like age, at some point you're like, it's not worth the time and energy to worry about what people think. So
yeah. No, I mean, it's it is a huge transformation for our industry, partly because our industry is so we are so educated to focus first of all on walking and obviously then running. I mean, this is kind of what we did back in the days.
right.
It was a huge challenge, but it's interesting when you talk now to amputees is that, and there is a study, recent one from the Veterans Organization, which revealed that it's really not that what they are concerned about. They are actually much more concerned now about other things like balance, like body image. And body image is really, really high up there.
Right.
And it's not the walking and the running as much anymore, because that is kind of given.
Yeah.
We have solved that, right?
Right. I mean, I remember as a younger amputee being on mechanical knees, I used to fall down all the time. And like, I was young, so I didn't get hurt or anything. And actually I'd fall down and I'd be more upset about the fact that I put a hole in my pants than I was like that I fell down. I'd just be like, I just bought these pants. But the way that the technology has changed and evolved, I don't fall down. I don't even think about it most of the time. The microprocessor gives me, a stumble recovery if I do stub my toe or something like that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like the technology has really changed the fact that you don't have to think about these things all the time. And that doesn't surprise me that people are like, can it look better?
Yeah.
Like, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's then you said earlier that you are big into fashion. I mean, will prosthetics just evolve into not being really medical devices, more like this what we are both wearing? It's
right. It becomes a fashion choice.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I think I think that people again, like we said earlier, I think people's perceptions are very different, starting to evolve as well. But I can't, I feel like we need more of these. People need to see Paralympic events coming to their televisions in their homes. They need to see characters on television who aren't doing something extraordinary. They're just going to work and they live their life with a disability. It's all normalizing. Yeah. Normalizing it for people who just are trying to get up and live their lives, and they're not trying to get to the Paralympics, but they still want their legs to look cool. Yeah.
Exactly. Katy, been great talking to you. You
Likewise.
are quite an inspiration. Incredible what you have achieved, and you are still so young. And what I wonder, as someone who has lived with limb loss all your life, your message to maybe younger yourself, new amputees that are going through that situation, starting on this journey.
I think if I could say anything, is one day at a time. I mean, early on, figure out how to inspire yourself to set small goals, and eventually a long line of small goals, you can look back and see that you've climbed a mountain. But if you're just standing at the bottom of a mountain looking up, it's overwhelming. It's teeny tiny steps the whole way.
Yeah, it's a work. It's patience.
Patience, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me here. And
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's been great talking to you.
Likewise.
All the best to you.
You too. Talk